Hi anglers, Creaky Tiki here, talking bearing replacement. If you've ever had a side plate bearing go bad in a reel, you know there's a couple things you got to do. Got to get that old bearing out, got to get the new bearing in. You might have a removable bearing cup like this old Newell has, where you can just unscrew the cup and it'll come out with the bearing inside of it. Or you might have an alloy reel where the bearing is pressed into the side plate from the inside, and you got to disassemble the reel, pull the spool out to get access to that bearing. Well, that's all well and good, but these bearings can sometimes be very, very stuck in there. Salt water is not our friend when it comes to making parts easy to separate. Well, back in the day, I just made myself a little tool. I got myself a piece of stainless shaft, ground an edge on it, put it on a piece of dowel, some nice wrapping like you put around a gaff on a boat. Made sure it's the right size where it fit in this bearing to pull it out. And all I had to do was stick it down the middle of the bearing, slide it over so that edge would grab that bearing, give it a couple of yanks, and the bearing would come out, hopefully. 9 times out of 10, that would do it. Every once in a while, there'd be a really stuck one that was really tough to get out. Well, an angler named Fred Minton showed me an aircraft tool that he had modified that works really, really well for grabbing that bearing and yanking it out, forcing it out. It's called a blind insertion and blind removal. If it's in that side plate or in this bearing cup, you got to get something through that bearing and get it to grab it and pull it out, hopefully straight out rather than trying to rock it out if it's really stuck. Well, that tool is called a Cleco tool, C-L-E-C-O. It is made by the Cleveland Air Tool Company way back in the day, and it's actually made for holding parts together while you rivet them. It's made for holding alloy assemblies together for aircraft while you rivet them. So what it has is a split shaft with some hard edges on it and a stationary spreader bar and a way to pull that shaft down and spread that shaft out where it grabs the piece blindly from the top and then this side presses it together. Well, the reason it works so good for a real bearing is when that bar spreads out and grabs that bearing, as that split bar comes down, the stationary spreader bar will hit the bottom of the bearing cup or hit the back of that side plate and force that bearing right out. There's just one thing you got to do before you use this tool. The tool, as it comes in its stock form, has a long split spear point on it. And that point can be so long that you can't get the lips of the tool underneath that bearing when you do that blind insertion. So I just carefully grind off the last part of that tip, because that tip is made to align different materials together when you're trying to clamp them together. We don't need that to pull a bearing. So grind a bit of that tip off to make sure that tool will go in far enough to split apart and grab the edge of that bearing and pull it out. Here's an example of that tool on my little Newell reel here. The bearing is in that bearing cup. I just take the right size Cleco tool, insert it, pull that spreader bar up, and it will force that bearing right out. And you can see it's pulled that bearing right out. That stationary spreader bar just helped push that bearing right out of the cup. So, if that looks like something you could use, you can find them used at aircraft surplus sites, aircraft surplus stores, or you can find them new online. You just need to make sure you get the right size tool. They come in sizes from 3/32 of an inch diameter all the way up to 5/16. I bought myself a nice little assortment of used ones I found at a aircraft tool surplus store, and these have worked for every bearing that I've needed. Now, these tools come in a variety of operational types. So this is called the cylindrical body tool, and this is the one where you actually turn this long button or shaft on the bottom and it pulls the split shaft down around that stationary spreader bar. Turn it the other way and it goes up. Now, they make a spring-loaded tool And the spring-loaded one you can tell because it will have this little ridge all the way around it, and you use a special pliers to squeeze it, put it in, and then just the spring pulls it tight. That's not what we're looking for to pull bearings. They have all different kinds. They have square body, they have machine driven, etc., etc., etc. The cylindrical body with this nice little round shaft on the bottom's the way to go. Now, one other thing, no matter what size of this cylindrical body tool you have, they make a special tool to fit around it that's basically an anti-reverse bearing like you have inside of today's modern reels that makes it really easy to quickly tighten it, and if you need some extra leverage, give you some extra leverage. So you just turn this tool and it will pull it down. It will work like a ratchet. Flip it over, and it will screw it out. Really good if you need some extra leverage or you want to do it quickly. So that's it. It is the Cleco tool modified with the tip ground off, the special Cleco tool anti-reverse bearing tightener loosener, and the cylindrical body, not any of the other types. Well, I hope this is helpful for you. Hope if you need to replace a bearing, this makes that job much easier. Hope you have great fishing, and hope we see you out in the water. Till then, Creaky out.